اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد الصادق الوعد الأمين وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما. الله الوعد الأمين وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما. Yeah, that's right. Now it's. أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم اهدنا الصراط المستقيم اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين. اللهم فصل وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته. In fact, as I said before, many people, in fact, hundreds, thousands of people dealt with Sirah in all the languages of on the earth, on the face of the earth, those which are written and even those which are not. But not all of them, in fact, did it in a professional way, right? So, but still, all ways and approaches to the Sirah, being professional or not, they are in fact beneficial in one way or another, right? But we try to put it along professional lines. The way we do it, for instance, as sessions at the university, or so, at least in the beginning, at least in the way we present it. So we are presenting it following 10 foundations or 10 principles. Anybody talking about anything, any science, any field of knowledge, be it aqidah, fiqh, self-purification, be it whatever, in fact, to put it along professional lines, one should approach in one way or another these 10 foundations. And these 10 foundations are, they can be grouped, all of them, in just one sentence in Arabic. Sorry. In fact, it is a mnemonic. We call it mnemonic sentence. A sentence which helps, for instance, the speaker to remember where he is, what he is talking about. So this sentence, I made it up myself, right? There are mnemonic sentences of other people, but I try to make my own mnemonic sentences so that, anyway, your things you don't tend to forget them quickly. In fact, so. الحسم والاستحسان لا فض فوك. الحسم والاستحسان لا فض فوك. الحاء تشير إلى الحد, that is to say the definition. This is number one, foundation number one, and we talked about it. And then السين, الحسم, السين refers to الاسم, that is to say the name, and we talked about it. Yes or no? That's right. And then الميم refers to al-mawdu'. We jumped over it, in fact. We are going to leave it till later on, until. And then wa, al-waw, الحسم والاستحسان. الواو refers to الواضع, and it is the very last thing we talked about, which is the founders. And we said that the founders, the very first founders, are the companions of the Prophet, peace be upon him, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala be pleased with them all. Very early, in fact, they recognized the importance of handed down to each other and to their children, in fact, the details of life, of the blessed life of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But the very first person who wrote, as I said before, a proper seerah book was Muhammad ibn Ishaq, and it was in 151. He died in 151, so it took some 120 years, in fact, for a seerah book to be written. And we said this is why we talked about the reason behind this is that at that time, and even now in many countries, in fact, Islamic tradition was and is basically oral, right? And we said that at that time, in fact, knowledge was in the breath of people, right? And later on, and in fact, because at that time and even now, in fact, human beings are more reliable than books. Human beings, in fact, when in a way, as Hadar Sahib himself said, and as we have been listening to Brother Qais, all the things he said are maybe written here, but the way he produced them, the way he, in fact, he rebuilds the whole thing. In fact, he is there. He makes it. It is as if he brings it alive, right? And then this is number one. Number two, he's there to ask questions. You can't ask questions from the book. Whatever you understand, you understand. Whatever you don't understand, you don't. Right? We don't ask questions when we are reading books. We can't, in fact. So at that time, in fact, human beings were and still are, in fact, much more reliable than books. But I don't know whether it is fortunately or unfortunately, in fact, the invention of printing and things. In fact, they made life easy for people, but at the same time, in fact, knowledge went from people into books. And what happens is that we ended up with what Hadar Sahib, the book, the text, and then the meaning. When knowledge was in the breath of people, the two things were together. When knowledge went into books, then the two things separated, and then we had to anyway look for the text. Yes, that's right, but the text is not enough at all. You need a teacher. And then we talked about the second person is Muhammad ibn Umar al-Waqidi. He died in 191 and then or 92, and then the third person, very famous, all seerah literature nowadays, be it in Arabic, be it in all other languages, they go back to Ibn Hisham. Sirat Ibn Hisham. You can't go around it, in fact. Sirat Ibn Hisham. And then from Ibn Hisham, people started writing seerah all over the world in all sorts of languages, as I said, written and non-written. And this is, in fact, this is one of the fulfillments of the name of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who is Muhammad. It was not known before. It was only at his time that, in fact, this name came to be used. In fact, in people named Muhammad, just 2 or 3 people before him, right? Because their fathers knew that a new prophet is coming and his name is Muhammad. So some of them, in fact, they named their sons Muhammad. So, but the meaning of the word Muhammad means the praised one, the praised one. And when you look at the innumerable books that form the Sirah literature, in fact, all of them, they make from that time until now, they make the fulfillment, they form, in fact, the fulfillment of the meaning of the word. The meaning of the word Muhammad. He is the praised one, and look at, in fact, Sirah literature in Chinese, Sirah literature in Russian, Sirah literature in English, of course, in Arabic, in all sorts of languages. So he is actually being praised up till now. And again, it is a fulfillment of many of the verses of the Holy Quran, such as وَرَفَعْنَا لَكَ ذِكْرَكَ. وَرَفَعْنَا لَكَ ذِكْرَكَ. It means, translation, in fact, the nearest meaning is we elevated your remembrance. So even those who are Muslims and those even who are not Muslims, they all know now about Muhammad, isn't it? So وَرَفَعْنَا لَكَ ذِكْرَكَ. And even fair-minded non-Muslims, in fact, they recognize that he was a great personality. So this was the founders. Now we'll talk about because we don't have time, I'm going to limit myself to just one more principle, which is al-hukm. That is to say, the legal ruling. What is the legal ruling of, in fact, Sirah? What is it? To deal with it, to read it, to give it to people. What is it? Is it wajib? Is it mandub? Is it what is it? In fact, you don't have to answer. In fact, because many people, in fact, said many things. Some people say, well, anyway, it's mandub. The majority of people, in fact, say that it is nowadays. Scholars, they say that it is mandub, right? Recommendable, right? To read Sirah, to deal with it, to in fact teach it to your children, and so on and so forth. But some people, they say no, it's not obligatory, and it's not even recommended. Why? Because hadith, ulum al-hadith, the science of hadith, yes, in fact, because it talks about acts of worship, what you should do's and don'ts. But Sirah, in fact, Sirah literature, it has to do with all sorts of things, things which are more in the form of habits. And therefore, for instance, just like Rasulullah ﷺ used to, if he's walking and someone calls him from behind, he used to turn all his blessed self and face him with his whole person. Right? This is a habit. For instance, he used to eat on the floor. This is another habit. And this is not my point of view, by the way. I'm talking about some people say, right? Some people say, so that not to confound things. They say there's no legal ruling which says that we should eat on the floor. But there are others, in fact, I said the majority of people, the majority of scholars, they say that it is recommended, right? But some scholars, and in fact, I tend towards these, the third, in fact, myself, I tend towards the third group, they say that it is wajib, obligatory. Why? Because the love of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is a condition of iman. Notice when Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when Sayyidina Umar ibn al-Khattab radiyallahu anhu ardahu wa nafa'ana bih, when he said, "O Prophet, I love you more than anything else apart from myself," he said, "No, Umar, until you love me more than yourself." In fact, so Iman is a condition of the soundness of Iman. love of Rasulullah is a condition of the soundness of Iman. But this is to love Rasulullah. But to love him more than anything else is a condition of perfection of Iman. And in fact, you can't love someone if you don't know him. No, suppose someone just phones you, you receive a phone call, you pick up the phone, someone says, hey, are you so-and-so? You say, yes. You say, I love you. You say, did we meet? Do we know each other? Did we meet somewhere? He said, no, I just, in fact, you say, he must be insane or some, in fact, because love necessitates knowledge. If you don't know someone, you can't love him. And if you are to love someone, you need to know, to get to know about him. And the more you know, the more your love is based. Otherwise, it's baseless, right? So, knowledge of, and of course, when you develop this feeling of love towards anything or anybody, you would like to know more and more about him. For instance, when someone loves someone else, he wants to be talked about. He wants people to find, for instance, to talk to him about that person, how he is, what did he say, even if it is trivial things. But still, he wants to learn, to know more and more. So, love of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when we come to it, it needs knowledge. And the more you know of Rasulullah, his acts of worship and even his habits. Those, notice that the Salaf al-Salih, Salafu هذه الأمة, you say the first community, they were in a different mindset. Completely different mindset. They didn't say, hey, this is a habit and this is an act of worship. They said, some of them, in fact, Muhammad ibn Aslam, yes, that's right. Because yesterday we talked about Muhammad Salim. This is Muhammad ibn Aslam. He was such a lover of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, to such an extent that he used to like watermelon, but he always refused to eat watermelon because he didn't know how Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam ate it. If he is to eat something, he should eat it the way Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam used to eat it. Otherwise, he refuses to eat it. Isn't this closer to real love? Yes or no? So, by the way, some of the lovers of Rasulullah, their love was so intense to such an extent that they died out of love. One of them is Imam al-Busayri, and that's why we are, in fact, reading Al-Burda every single time we say to the adhkar. We always start with, in fact, because he is said that he died out of love. And there's no, by the way, even scientifically speaking, it's recorded, not even now. Ibn Sina lived in a way centuries and centuries before, and in his annals, right, recordings, they found that he had a patient, a female, and a young female, and she was withering away, and so he was feeling her pulse and talking to her, and then he noticed that sometimes the pulse, in fact, quickens, and then he repeated the question. He went back to the same ideas he was talking about, and then he realized that whenever he talks about certain people, in fact, and he said, where are you from? She said, I'm from so-and-so. He said, yes, I know the area. Who are the families you know? I know family so-and-so. And then he said, what about family so? And then he noticed when he comes to a certain family, the pulse quickens, and then he started talking about members of that same family. And then when he comes to the name of a young man, the pulse quickens, and then he realized that she was in fact dying out of love, and then he informed the family, and then they tried to find some solution for that. So some people, in fact, they don't just in fact limit themselves to the shart al-sihha, that you say, the condition of soundness of iman, and even this, it necessitates the love of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And hence, it's not just recommended or not recommended, it is obligatory. You don't have to take my option, but in fact, this is how things are. This is at least how I see things. Another point, very, very important indeed, and it has to do with the what happens when we are with the Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, or when we are with the representatives of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that is to say, al-mashayikh. Notice, Sayyidina Umar ibn al-Khattab radiyallahu anhu said, "O Rasulullah, I love you more than anything apart from myself." So he is talking about his state, isn't it? And then Rasulullah said, "No, you need to love me until your iman is not so complete until you love me more than anything else, including yourself." And then immediately at that time he said, "Yes, Rasulullah, now I love you more than anything else, including myself." Now, less than 1 minute ago he said A, and then less than 1 minute after he said B, and the two things are different. And they are logically inter-exclusive. Logically, they are inter-exclusive. If you accept A, then A excludes B, and if you accept B, B excludes, in fact, A. If he is right in the first saying, I wouldn't say claim, for in a way a companion of the Prophet, peace be upon him, then he is not right in the second sentence, and if he is right in the second, he is not right on the first, logically speaking. Yes or no? That's right. But we are not talking about Mr. Nobody, we are talking about Umar ibn al-Khattab. So what do you think why? Yeah, of course, B, but in this case, why did he say something which doesn't go along the truth in B? Ben, yes, please.
That's what he believed, but he was able to shift his mode of thinking to suit both.
Yes, you're right. You're right. If we were talking about things which have to do with perception of things, you can change if things are explained to you properly. You can change your way of perceiving things. But when it comes to love, right, you can't just go from one stage of love to another immediately, right? So, in fact, just to make life easy for you to shorten things, in fact, this is because of the ma'iyya or the companionship of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Just being with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam takes you from one station to another. And the same thing happens when we are in the companionship of mashayikh. Just by being in their companionship, in their company, this in fact makes you either they take you spiritually upward, or their companionship makes you eligible to go upward. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته. Any question or remark?
Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Professor, I was just going to ask yourself, I've heard this before a few times, people mention that when people die out of love, is it like because they don't eat and things like that, and they just don't want to do anything, or is it some other internal thing that's happening? Or how do they die out of love? I just wanted some.
Yeah. In fact, it may take, in fact, different ways or different shapes, but the result is that some people, in fact, because of their yearning, they yearn to be with the other, and the other is not there, and they yearn to be with the other. So this yearning, when it goes, in fact, beyond the limits of what they can bear, in fact, they forget, for instance, about themselves. They don't tend their own ways, or sometimes they just die out of ishq, right? And this is at least if this is possible to die. If some people, for instance, may die out of love, to die out of the love of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is in fact worth it, isn't it? And if we are to love, in fact, we are in fact to love Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. If you have the ability to love, in fact, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is much. I'm not saying that. I'm not telling you not to love your wives and relatives and this. No, sorry, but I'm saying, why not love our wives for the sake of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, for instance, who said the very last very last pilgrimage, the very last thing he said, he was in fact telling males to take great care of females. So then your love of her, for instance, would be much deeper and much better, in fact, for yourself and for her, right? It would be a form of worship if you are doing it for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and for the sake of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And then it will not prevent you from the love of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, because the heart is more like a dish, in fact, aerial dish. If it goes one way, it doesn't capture other stations. So you'd better, in fact, direct it towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Thank you very much indeed. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.